I'm Josh Cantwell, Chief Executive Officer at Grand Mental Health. Welcome to We Don't Talk About That, a podcast committed to honest, direct conversations about mental health. In each episode, we talk openly about the many different challenges that face our communities and those we serve. Together, our team and special guests explore new ways to approach mental health, from progressive thinking to mindful treatment. Here's to open minds and open dialogue. Enjoy today's episode.
Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Talk About That. I'm Jessica Lobetz, and I hope you're ready to lean into the tough conversations most people avoid. Today, we're stepping into sacred and vulnerable territory, exploring the mental health challenges faced by clergy and faith leaders. I'm honored to be joined by Sister Christine Ereiser from St. Joseph Monastery in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She is a woman of deep faith, compassion, and courage, and someone who has not only served her community with grace, but who has also walked her own journey through depression and anxiety. In this episode, Sister Christine shares her personal story, the silent struggles so many in ministry face, and why it's time to break the stigma around mental health in faith communities. So let's get into it. Sister Christine, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. For those who may not know you, could you tell us a little bit about your background and your role at St. Joseph Monastery?
Sure. So I entered the Benedictine Sisters a little over 40 years ago, so spent the majority of my life at the monastery. So we are Catholic religious sisters who live together in community and do a variety of ministries from the monastery, the most primary of which is prayer in common, prayer in private, and living community life together. And then our ministry, individual ministries, spring forth from that. I've had the privilege to serve our community in a number of roles. For 12 years, I served as the prioress, or the leader of the community. And that was a very sacred time for me. And then, so in our situation, we changed those roles. So I was the spiritual leader for 12 years, and then we had someone else who did that for 6 years, and now we just have installed a new prioress. So that changes in our community. And so right now I serve as the treasurer and business manager for the community, and I also give assistance to the sister who is now our prioress.
Wonderful. Well, tell us what drew you to a life of faith and service, and how has this evolved over the years?
So growing up, I always was very drawn to religion, to church activities. That was just always kind of a big part of my life. I had great influence with, I had a couple of my aunts who were very involved in the church, and so that I kind of followed in their footsteps in a way. As a young adult, I was very committed to serving God, and of course, at that time, a little unclear. What is that? What does that look like? And I realized in my job that I thought would be my career, and then, doing church activities, evenings and weekends, that what I did at church was so much more fulfilling to me than what I was doing, to earn a living, was kind of how it boiled down to. And so I thought, okay, I think I want to explore, is God really calling me to this kind of a commitment in a religious community with lifetime vows. Mm-hmm. So that, that's, so I did that when I entered the community when I was 24.
Wow, so young. And had you ever felt, as you were exploring this call, if you could live up to this idea? And I'm going to just say, perfection, spiritual fitness, as we get into the conversations around all that and what it means. Had you struggled with that idea?
I think initially, a beautiful part about Benedictine life is we live intergenerationally. So yes, there were younger women who were entering with me or had just entered a few years ahead of me, but then there were sisters, from late 20s till their early 90s.
Wow.
And all living together. So yeah, I saw some of what we would call our wise elders, and just feeling I'm never gonna be able to live the way they do or have the faith they have. And one thing, over time that we learn is that it's a lifetime of learning how to do that. But there is always that, am I measuring up? Am I good enough?
Yeah. That's something so many of us, no matter where we are in our professional or personal lives, we ask ourselves that question. And so let's talk a little bit about your openness, about your journey with depression and anxiety. And me having worked with you adjacently for other projects, I must say, surprised to hear that even you, Sister Christine, had dealt with depression and anxiety. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that journey?
Sure. So, I think I struggled with depression for a long time before it was really ever diagnosed. And then, so after it was diagnosed and I was receiving medication and talk therapy, there are times when the medication may stop working, like we build up an immunity to it, right? And so you have to change. So what happened with me was I was kind of at that kind of break point where I think the medication was starting to not be as effective. And that was in 2022. And then I had a couple of people close to me pass away unexpectedly. And then I came down with COVID. And that really kind of turned into a real crisis for me, not so much physically, although I did have some longer term effects from the COVID. But it really took me down a spiral mentally. And I was kind of teetering already a little bit. And then that was really, it felt kind of like a whirlpool or an eddy where I was just kind of in this vortex. And so I was really struggling to be up in the morning for morning prayer and our celebration of Mass, just feeling tired all the time, really irritable, very much not wanting to ask for help or admit even that I needed help or think that. And yet in my mind, I would often just kind of hear myself saying, why can't I just be okay? So I was very fortunate that the sister who at that time was our prioress really reached out a loving hand and said, I think let's think about and pray about you getting some help in terms of a more holistic kind of help, because I was still having some physical effects from COVID. I was having very difficult depression, and there we have the option. There are a couple of places, and I think this is not unique to the Catholic environment, but either intensive inpatient or outpatient services for clergy or for people in some aspect of religious life or church leadership. I was able to go to a facility in another state for 6 months and really get the help I needed for a really good, deep look at the medication I was on and the medication I needed. help with my physical situation in terms of I was having some mobility issues at that time. So there was a physical therapist there who could work with me regularly on that. And then a variety of therapists and groups that I participated in to help with the depression, how I was feeling about myself, feeling like my community would be better off if I weren't there, that I was dragging them down, which, that was my thinking,
right.
and then that became my feeling. So really working with that cognitive disconnect about what was real and what I thought was real. So really spending a lot of time working on sorting out those thoughts, getting a different perspective on them. So I was very, very blessed to have that experience. I don't know what would have happened if my prioress had not given me that opportunity or acknowledged that something was wrong.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. And first of all, just appreciate you for sharing this journey, because I cannot imagine that it's an easy story to tell, having lived through that. But when did you know you needed help? Because I do feel like the prior is saying, let's consider some options. Was that the trigger point for you to say, okay, something is wrong and I really have to figure something out here?
Yeah. So I with the first time that it came up, that sister said, we may need to think about you spending some time outside of community to get the help you need. And I was very put off by that at first. I thought, well, I thought it's not that bad and blah, blah. And then, that just planted a seed for me. And so over the next several weeks, I really thought about that. And I think that's probably something I need to explore. And so I went back to her and I said, you mentioned this. I think I want to think about that. So we spent a week, each of us, praying about that and discerning and doing a little bit of research about what kind of help was available, what places might be appropriate for me. And at the end of that week, we met again together, and we both felt through our prayer that, yes, I did need to go somewhere. And we both felt that this particular place was the right place for me.
As a person of faith and as a leader, was it difficult to reconcile your mental health struggles with your role in the church or even who God is? Was it difficult to reconcile that?
I think my sense of God and who God is really stayed pretty stable through that. But I have and was in treatment with others who were really questioning that. I think my struggle more was, God, you've called me to this life. You've called me to serve you. And why is this happening? I feel like I've done everything right, God. So why aren't you holding up your end of the deal? I mean, just kind of all that that kind of noise we get going that really kind of can mask over what is really real and what's really happening.
Yeah, there's this unspoken belief in many faith communities, not just the Catholic Church, that prayer alone should be enough. And you referenced, we prayed about it, we discerned, what is the right option. How do you now respond to the idea of prayer being enough? It should be enough.
Prayer is such an important part of my life and my relationship with God and with Jesus. Absolutely primary. And I understand, and for a period of time earlier in my life really felt like, my prayers should be enough to get me through this. But I think, thinking about God has given us the gift of wisdom and knowledge in terms of science, medication, psychology, psychiatry. And so for me, getting that help, So I knew if I had a diagnosis of diabetes, I would be taking insulin. If I had a diagnosis of cancer, I would be taking radiation treatment or chemotherapy. This is just an indication that the chemicals in my brain were out of balance. And because of that, then my thinking had gotten really twisted in terms of what was real and not real. So I really felt like it was both and. It was the therapies and the prayer that I needed together. And that's why I was so grateful that the treatment facility I went to was faith-based and designed for church leaders.
And do you think it helped that it was not here in your home community? Do you think getting away also helped you through that?
I'm sure it did and we did look at, if there were some local options. But to have that gift and the freedom to be away, to just focus on myself, which, that's also kind of seems selfish, right? But to come to terms with that and to be given the gift to spend that time on myself without the other duties or expectations or, there were times I needed a lot more rest because of the deep psychological work I was doing. Had I been home, I would have not felt as free, even though I would be allowed to take that time. I would not have felt as free to do that. There would always be some real or perceived demand on my time that by being away, I didn't have and could really just take that time to focus on the work I needed to do and on the time I needed to spend in prayer as well.
That's so good. And it leads me to this next kind of thought around selfishness, right? Taking the time you needed for you feels selfish. So how has your understanding of spiritual wellness expanded to include emotional and psychological care?
Yeah. So the whole idea of self-care and taking time for myself, that to me, that just always sounded so selfish. And if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I don't need to do that, right? I don't need to take care of myself, or I don't need time off, or, that was, and I would say I still struggle with that a little bit in terms of like how much work time is too much, and for me, my whole religious life, my ministry has been in the monastery. So even, trying to balance that, how much time am I at work and at prayer and private prayer and leisure and, putting that all together. But slowly really understanding that if I'm not well, If I'm not well, I cannot help anybody else. It's like on an airplane. Put your mask on
first.
It is true.
It is true.
Yeah. And just really realizing that when I am run down, when I'm depressed, if I'm anxious, I'm really not able to help somebody else with the same quality I could when I am resourced and taking care of myself.
This is such a good reminder to everyone listening. The oxygen mask. Put it on yourself first. I know many of us have responsibilities and we want to put it on our children first. We want to put it on the ministry first. But if you are not well, you cannot give your best to those who need you or who would learn from you or glean from you.
Exactly. We talk about, the excellence, being an excellent minister and ministering in excellence to others. And, we end up just giving that lip service if we're really not in a place of being able to tap into our best self, to my best self.
So, how can we help faith communities shift from silence or shame around mental health to compassion and support?
Yeah, it's curious that is so difficult when we don't do that when someone is physically sick or struggling, But it is because it is unseen,
It's silent.
Yes. So, I think certainly one component of that is just education, and if your faith community, isn't really open to that type of education as a community, then I really encourage each person to do what you can to get some education, just some basic, what is depression? What is anxiety? What is bipolar? How does that affect somebody? And then to just, I would say, especially to faith leaders, two things, I guess. One is to just kind of have in your pocket some resources for people, whether that's people in your community, for yourself, for colleagues that may come to you and say, I'm really struggling and I don't know what to do. I think that kind of peer support among pastors or teachers of religion and theology, whatever it is, to have that kind of support to be able to say, I think I might need some help. Because, we're not going to go to the congregation or whoever to say I need help. And then, I guess I would say, too, it does take courage to say, I'm taking a leave of absence to get help, or I'm taking X amount of time to do this, or I'm cutting back on how much I'm going to be available because I've got to take care of myself. When, again, if they were recovering from a major physical illness, they would certainly do that. But it is the same thing.
It is the same thing. And we've got to talk about that more so that people really understand that it is okay to get what you need. So tell me how your own community at St. Joseph has grown or changed its approach to mental health as a result of your experiences.
Yeah. So my sisters were very, very supportive, very blessed with that. We have had a lot of conversation even before my situation arose around mental health and what issues we face together and individually in that regard. But I think I had the opportunity, so I left 2 years ago, right about this time of year, for 6 months of treatment. I had the opportunity to come home at Thanksgiving, kind of like 3/4 of the way done, or 7/8, whatever. But I was home for about a week, and I made it a point to visit with each of my sisters in the community to kind of tell them how I was doing, to let them ask any questions they had about what I was doing, the work I was doing personally, or why did I need to go, or whatever. And I think it just gave them a chance to see that I was different, And I remember one sister saying, your eyes are different. You're not looking at other people like, fix me, I need help. But it was more, I was like sharing on a even keel with others, and that was really telling to me. So that was very helpful. But I think, the more, so for example, now, as a part of the treatment program I was in, every 6 months I do a 1-week continuing care workshop. I'm able to do that online, thankfully, so I'm not having to fly every 6 months somewhere for a week. But I always tell them, I'm getting ready to do my continuing care workshop. I'm going to be online a lot. They know that I have a support team that I work with made up of a couple of sisters and other people I work closely with. They know I go to therapy every week. So they, I try to make it just as normal as, I see my therapist every week. Some people see their chiropractor every couple of weeks. It's just that same rhythm of caring for oneself.
And this is how we normalize it. This is how we break the stigma, as you are integrating what you need into your life, and it is normalized. And I'm really happy to hear that for you. Are there other resources or things you do that keep you in a really good place?
That really learning about self-care, I joke with people about it. It could be a full-time job just doing self-care. And it's really important. So, I was feeling like a couple of weeks ago that I'm getting kind of a little bit run down, and maybe I could take a few days off and just kind of recharge, and started looking at my calendar, talking with my priorist what would work. So I was able to take off the first 3 days of this week and just spend it, in quiet and out in nature, some just really recharging and getting some, extra rest. And then, that does take some courage to say, I need time off, or I need this, or I need that.
To unplug.
Yes, absolutely. And yet that's a really, we've just got to make that normal.
Sister Christine, do you watch the news? Listen, I try so hard to tune out a lot of extra things that are happening externally that usually weigh me down. I'm a high empath. And so do you limit your intake of things that might make you sad?
I do. I do. And for years, I was what I call a NPR junkie.
Oh.
I had it on all the time. And since I'm back from treatment, I might look at headlines. There may be one or two stories I read. But no, I don't watch the news. I don't listen to the news. It's not good for me. And I also, for myself, this does not apply certainly to everybody, but just the amount of distraction that I let myself spend time on, whether that's TV or doom scrolling on social media. Or going to a movie that, for me, movies are very hard because it's so big and loud. I just kind of can get sucked into it. So I know I can't do that. So yeah, there are some boundaries I put around what I take in. I love just visiting with people one-on-one or a small group, playing games, just things that keep me tapped into other people. When I start to isolate, that's a huge tell for me. And so even trying to discern about, okay, I want to take some days off and I'm going to go by myself. Okay, am I starting to isolate, or is this really just renewing? So just to be on the watch and to have people who are going to help me notice, I think you're maybe slipping back here a little bit.
That's really good to have that accountability
Absolutely.
in place. So what would you say to someone who may be listening right now, clergy or a lay person who feels isolated in their mental health journey? What would you say?
Wow, that's a tough place to be. I really encourage people who are feeling isolated and aware that maybe they need some help. There is just such a variety of ways to get help. There are a lot of support groups, not just 12-step groups, but support groups for people who are feeling depressed or feeling anxious. And sometimes that's a good first step. And to get information about therapists or people who can prescribe medication or whatever, often your primary care doctor is somebody who can get you on the right path of somebody to talk to. But yeah, isolating, even just if there's a close friend, one person you can confide in and can help you move forward with getting that help. My opinion, you really do need somebody who's a professional, who has those letters behind his or her name, and not just a close friend. You think, well, I'll talk to them and it's going to be okay.
And not just a pastor or a preacher or, when we're talking about the faith community and we see and we revere and hold these leaders up.
Absolutely.
But if they don't have the mental health.
They don't have that training. Yeah, it's really huge. And I guess one other thing I would say to those who are pastors and leaders, we deal with a lot of grief. And we've got to be able to have an outlet for that, because it can just consume us and really bring us down. And so just dealing with that. We've had a number of things that have happened recently in different faith communities, acts of violence, other situations that happen, whether it's a congregant or the pastor who is involved in a situation. But those situations definitely need professional help to step in and help, because it's just too much to try to navigate that ourselves.
I agree. Sister Christine, is there a prayer or a quote, a song, I know you're a musician, or a scripture that has grounded you during difficult times that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, there's a lot. Of course, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The thought of really walking with my good shepherd into those green pastures is a great visual meditation for me. I think just for me, the great hope in the resurrection. We have all sorts of small mini resurrections throughout our life, right? Mm-hmm. So dealing with mental health, I think we do walk through the valley. And to know that there is a resurrection and to live into that, to take the steps we need and to lean into our faith, lean into the help we're getting, and to trust that God is there in the help, that God is speaking through your therapist, that God is speaking in all the ways we get our self-care.
I love that. Is there anything else you would like to share before we conclude today?
I would just say, don't let the darkness win. Do not let the darkness win, because we're overcomers in faith, and there's no reason for the darkness to win.
Thank you so much, Sister Christine. We appreciate your story, your courage, your vulnerability, and your inspiration today. Thank
you. It's been a privilege. Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks for listening to We Don't Talk About That. If there's one thing we hope you take away from this conversation, it's that mental health is not a sign of spiritual weakness. It's part of the human experience, and no one, not even the most faithful among us, should have to walk the road alone. Until next time, be kind to yourself and keep having the conversations that matter.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of We Don't Talk About That, supported by Grand Mental Health. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast and become part of our growing community of mental health advocates. Visit grandmh.com for more information.